Hey everyone, welcome to Happy to See Me, the podcast that puts the spotlight on the overlooked and underestimated. I'm Erika Casupanan, and I am your host. And today I am speaking to Zachary Reality. But first, I love to start each episode talking about something I was happy to see this week. And this week, I got some awesome advice from a friend. So for context, I got asked to meet somebody because they wanted career advice. I find over the last little while, I've been getting requests for career advice, which I think is so flattering. But honestly, there are moments where I still feel like I have imposter syndrome. I feel like I look like I have everything together, but there is an infinite amount of things to worry about. So when I got this request for advice, I was thinking, okay, am I actually going to be able to provide value to this person and actually help them? Or am I going to disappoint and let them down because I still feel like an imposter? And my friend said to me, you only need to know 10% more than the person you're giving advice to. And I think that that puts so many things into perspective because I don't need to be an expert. And I think nobody necessarily needs to be an expert to be helpful to somebody because maybe that little 10% more that I know is enough to unlock this new insight, this new next step for somebody. And that could be what sets them on the right path to get to wherever they want to go. So hearing that I only need to be 10% better than the person I'm helping out was what I was happy to see this week. And I want to thank that friend who gave me that advice. That was my friend Priya Sam, who was actually a guest on my podcast. She was on episode 26 and she talked about public speaking advice. So make sure you check that out. And fun fact, I actually met Priya because I was a guest on her podcast when I first came off of Survivor. And this actually ties in really well with the following guest because I've been so fortunate with the people that I've met and the relationships I've built as a result of podcasting and being a guest on shows. And with my guest, he has a podcast of his own, and I was a guest on his show 2 years ago when I came off of Survivor, and we've been able to keep in touch and maintain a relationship. And I am so happy to have him on the show today. So if you have been on TikTok over the last few years and you are a reality TV fan, you definitely know who Zachary Reality is. I can assure you, you have seen him in your For You page with his signature red hair. Zachary is a content creator and entertainment reporter who built this niche based on reporting on reality TV. So if you're a reality TV fan, this is a treat for you because we talk about his lifelong love of reality TV, what it's like to watch people on TV and then interview them and build real relationships with them. And we both talk about the reality shows that we're watching right now and we give our thoughts on them. And if you want some inspiration, Zachary talks about what it was like moving to LA with dreams of becoming an entertainment reporter and the pandemic totally slowing that down, and then choosing to strategically start a TikTok account to build this reality TV niche. And now he is being hired as an entertainment reporter and he is reporting from red carpets and interviewing so many people he's been a fan of for years. So even when it looked like the path was closed, he found a way to blaze his own trail. So if you listen to this episode and you enjoy it, please share it with a friend. But let's get into it. Here is my interview with Zachary Reality. I hope you enjoy it.
Do you remember when I had you on my podcast? I hit record almost immediately before we even had small talk because I knew we were just going to start getting right into it and that we wouldn't be able to stop. And that's the exact same thing we're now doing on your podcast.
I know. Oh my gosh, it feels like, yeah, it was 2 years since I was on your show. But I also feel like I knew you before I did your podcast because I had watched you online, like all throughout the pandemic, I had watched you. So
Oh
by
my
the time
God.
we were chatting, I'm like, oh yeah, this is just my pal Zachary.
Yeah. Well, I was so excited to chat with you because I'm like such a diehard Survivor fan. And I was for the longest time. And I think you were my first ever like winner interview with a Survivor contestant. So it was like a moment for me as well.
Oh my God. I still remember you made a TikTok. It was like a TikTok about me winning. And you were like, oh my God, yeah, she totally deserved to win. I love her. I'm like, Zachary Reality? Because truthfully, I used to be a Bachelor fan. Like I would watch all of the main shows. I would watch Bachelor in Paradise. But then, it's like one, I feel like I kind of got tired of it. It kind of started to be the same thing over and over again. And then when you started recapping the shows, I'm like, oh, I don't need to watch anymore because I'm just going to watch this
Mhm.
guy's TikToks. So for better or for worse, it's almost like you weaned me off of sitting through the 2-hour shows because I'm like, oh, Zachary will just like explain what's going on.
Exactly. In my bio on TikTok, it says Spark Notes. It says reality TV Spark Notes, which is like so full circle for me because I used to hate reading books in high school and middle school. So I would read the Spark Notes online. So I just think it's like so funny to now like be that person for people. And like I love that people
Mhm.
can rely on me. So people watch my videos, whether they're a fan of the shows I talk about or if they just want the recap and then they don't have to sit through it, like you said. So it's cool to be like reliable, but also like entertaining.
Okay, we've established that I know what you do and I'm a fan of you. But if there's anybody listening and they're not familiar with what you do on TikTok, can you explain?
I find all of the shows that I watch that we watch, Survivor, Bachelor, Love is Blind, Housewives, and I just give breakdowns in like 45 seconds, now like a minute and a half because TikTok has new algorithms, but I just give a really short, condensed breakdown of a 2-hour episode of a TV show. It's usually The Bachelor or a podcast if people don't have time to listen to, or I'll just sum up the articles that everyone just wants to talk about and hear and just like they don't know what's going on. I'm just going to tell you the bullet points and like insert my opinion and like that's like a general basis of what I do.
Okay, I love this. And I love seeing the way that your TikTok has changed over the years. I don't know where it is on the internet. I remember I saw it at some point, but there's a demo reel you have, and at least one version of the demo reel, I am in it when I'm on your podcast. And I'm like, I see the strategy, I see the empire you're building. Keep going. So I
Hmm.
want to ask you about all of this. But first, I want to ask, okay, were you always a reality TV fan? How did you get into this?
6 years old, Grandma Jackie was like babysitting and we had SpongeBob on and she was like, I need to watch Survivor. I'm not going to miss Survivor. So as soon as that happened, I was hooked on Survivor. And then by the time I was like 9, I started watching everything else.
Okay, so you got into reality TV so quickly. That was the same with me. I started watching Survivor at 11 on the
Mm,
first season, so I'm a little bit older than you, but it was
right.
like
I
the
know.
thing
I'm
that
like,
pulled you in.
every time I like meet someone from Survivor, I'm like, wait, I shouldn't tell them how long I've been watching because it just ages them. And I'm sorry.
I know, I know. I interviewed Earl Cole a few weeks ago, and I was like, "Yeah, you won like more than 15 years ago." And he was like, "Thanks." No,
I
Earl
know,
is
but
the
it's like,
sweetest person ever.
we have to tell you like how hardcore of a fan we are. So it's like, I'm sorry to bring up the history books.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, and guess what? That means you're iconic, so just take
Just
it.
take it or leave it. Like we all, are going to be an age at one point or another.
Yes, yes. Okay, so you started watching reality TV, got deep into it. By the time you were 9, watched all the shows. So, did you always know you wanted to be in entertainment or something? Or what was that journey like for you when you were a kid?
I've always wanted to be in entertainment. I've always wanted to be on stage performing. I love to make people laugh and I love to like tell people like the news, like the gossip. I grew up acting, doing theater. I was like in a lot of different plays. I was singing. I was in chorus. I was like Prince Charming. I was in Red Riding Hood. I was in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I did a bunch of plays, and then that kind of turned more into acting and improv by the time I got to high school. And then that turned more into film. I started making like short films, commercials. I went to film camp. I went to film high school for like half of the day. And then when I went to college, you have to like study something.
Mhm.
So I studied broadcast journalism. Like I started with communications, it fell into broadcast journalism. And then as I learned more and more about the job market and like the opportunities, and I started to think about what am I actually going to do to make money after college, it all kind of just made sense to me that like I've been watching these reality shows for so many years and there's now I'm starting to see social media change. This was in 2019 when I graduated. That I'm starting to realize that like there is so many opportunities to be a journalist, be a news reporter, but like to talk about the things that you want to talk about. And for me, that was reality TV. So it all kind of just like came together, I think, like, a few years ago, like 5 years ago. But I always knew I wanted to be in entertainment for sure.
I love that you figured out that the thing that you love that probably seems frivolous, like reality
Hmm.
TV, is something that you can do making a living. And it's something that, yeah, you can build your life around this passion. But the thing is, with journalism, I used to work in public relations for many years. And every time I hear about how newsrooms are shrinking, it's hard to get a job as a journalist. So when you moved to LA, what was it like when you were trying to break into the entertainment reporting scene?
I know it was literally the hardest thing because I moved there. I'm like, I am going to be on E News in 3 months. I already know. Like, I was so confident. So I moved there without a job. I had like a decent amount of savings and I found roommates online. So, like, I knew what I was getting myself into and I was up for the challenge. But like, it was really hard to find work at first. So I joined some temp agencies and they will basically like get you temporary jobs, whether it's for 2 weeks, 1 day. So I was like a receptionist. I did data entry for like 5 weeks. That was horrible. And then I was also doing Uber driving, which is like
Oh, wow.
crazy. Yeah. Because I needed to make money to pay my rent and like pay my bills because like my dad wasn't going to pay for that. Like he already paid for my college, like bless. So I didn't want to work at a restaurant because I like did that all throughout college. Then I did Uber on the side because you can kind of do that whenever you want, right?
Hmm.
Like you could just pick it up, drive around. And I was new to the city, so it was so much fun. So doing temp jobs for a few months, I finally got into like some freelance hosting at AfterBuzz TV and Hollywire, and I started doing it for free. And I would do like different like podcasts and news outlet stuff for free before I would end up getting like small payments. But I think what the pandemic and everything that happened 6 months into my move, it was
Wow.
it was impossible to find a job. So I literally had to make my own. And I also think that's when TikTok started for everybody. So it kind of just all happened naturally with like the times.
Oh my gosh. Okay, the hustle.
Yeah.
Wait, sorry, I feel like this is off track, but what was it like being an Uber driver?
Well, I liked it because I was like driving around LA and it was so fun. And I only did it during the day because I knew I wouldn't want drunk people. It was hard because like my leg would end up really hurting after 5, 6 hours or my foot.
Hmm.
But I had fun like kind of wandering around because I was so new to the city and I just like I didn't need to like be in a corporate job right away. I was 22. So it just felt really nice to like make money on my own terms and just kind of live in California and figure out like how am I gonna get started here. So it was good for when it was good. But as soon as the
Hmm.
pandemic hit, 6 months in, I was like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta rip this sticker off my car. Now this is getting embarrassing. I'm like, it was fun for a little bit.
I mean, you need all of life's adventures, and it shows that you are willing to hustle. You're
I
willing to do
am.
what you need to do to make it happen.
Absolutely.
Before you got these free jobs in broadcasting, were you auditioning? Like, were you able to come about auditions easily?
Well, I was trying to get like side jobs at like the big companies, like Entertainment Tonight, E News, whatever. Like I was trying to do production assistant work, just anywhere to work my way in. I didn't necessarily I didn't necessarily have to be on camera right away, but I wanted to at least work for like a cool company where there could be opportunities down the road. So that's just what I was looking for. And then I realized over time that I needed to start with the smaller networks, and like you have to do things one step at a time. And it was kind of crazy to like learn that the hard way, but also be like, wait, duh, like who gets their job at 22 or 23? You know what I mean? Like you have to
Hmm.
do every single step, every single phase. And that's what's fun about the industry and about like, seeing growth each year is that, it's just like things get better over time and you put more work into things, you get more later on.
Totally. And especially you were so young. So you were in your early 20s when you moved there. Did you know a lot of people in LA? Like you probably started from scratch in terms of trying to make connections. And it's such a
Yeah.
connection based industry.
I knew like two people from like my Israel programs that I did in the summer, like internships there. And then my cousin, Jonathan, he does like video editing. So I actually stayed with him for my spring break in college. And then me and my friends did another trip to LA during winter break. So I came out here twice before I moved to like to really set things up. But I didn't know anyone. But I did know like a few people who knew a few people. So I was able to get like I got this one job for like 2 days at Bob's Burgers, like in the editing room. Like literally like two weeks in. It was like in September, like a weekend and whatever. And it was just so funny to like do like small things like that. So it truly is all about who you know, but like you have to start from the ground up.
That's the thing. And you never know where you're going to find your next connection that helps you to break into the next thing.
Yeah, it's all about connections and putting in the hustle. And I think that with social media, which I'm sure we'll talk all about, like that is
Yeah.
truly like the resume of all resumes. Like I haven't made a resume in years. And I remember like updating my resume every time I would get a new temporary job and thinking like I needed to add it, even though I only did it for 4 days, right? Or like 2 weeks. You're like, I have experience, and then social media is truly like the new 2024 resume.
Ooh, I love that you put it that way. I've never heard it like that, but it makes so much sense, right? It's like once you are on TikTok and you get onto people's algorithm, people
Mhm.
know who you are and they know what you do and they see the audience that you've built. Getting onto social media during the pandemic, were you a big social media person before that?
Yeah, I've always loved social media. I mean, I was kinda late to the game with, like, Instagram and Twitter, like, I was like, "This seems so dumb," but then, once TikTok started, like, being in LA, like, I felt like we were, like, the home of TikTok. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong because I was here and, like,
Hmm.
I worked at Saddle Ranch for a couple months as, like, a hostess, and that was, like, where all the TikTokers would go, so I just, like, was so into it from the beginning before I even started making, like, videos about reality TV and, like, thinking this could be a job, like, I was still trying to do dances just for fun.
Yeah. And when you started making your reality TV TikToks, you started with talking about The Bachelor.
Yeah.
Did you intend to make this something that you could use to build your profile as an entertainment reporter, or was it more of a hobby during the pandemic?
No, it definitely was the goal from the beginning because I knew
Mhm.
I wanted to work and I felt like I couldn't work because of the pandemic. And then I was putting effort into other entertainment companies on their online platforms instead of wanting to build my own. So I knew from the beginning I had to make a TikTok. And they always said, find your niche, find your niche. And they really mean that. If you want to grow on TikTok, the number one way to grow is to find a niche just to get people hooked. It could be literally coffee. It could be the
Mhm.
dumbest freaking niche, but it's like the only way to grow to get an audience together, to build a community. So as soon as I did one video on The Bachelor and it hit over 450,000 views, I knew that was going to be my niche.
Okay, so you didn't intend to be the Bachelor reporter. It was just you were responding to how popular that was.
A little bit of both, because I do love The Bachelor. That is my favorite
Yeah.
show. But I also knew I needed to make it a niche to grow. So both.
You talked about how you started watching Survivor when you were 6, so I was always curious. I'm like, how come you started with The Bachelor versus Survivor, which was like your first reality TV love?
Because I think that The Bachelor started at like 11 and I'm still so into it, where Survivor, I kind of
Mhm.
fell off like around season 30. Like I came back to watch your season and a few other seasons, but I kind of fell off because I did start it so young. And I also think that The Bachelor is just more relevant in pop culture. It just works for me. Like it just
Yeah,
stuck.
yeah.
I'm so good at talking about it. Like it truly was, for whatever reason, like it fits just so naturally on camera and with an audience that there was no way I wasn't gonna just run with that.
Yeah, totally. I feel like with Survivor, everybody kind of has that couple years where they drop off. Like, I feel like my last 2 years or something of high school, like I dropped off. And then once I got to university and I had to study for exams, I'm like, okay, now it's time to procrastinate. Let's go back and catch up on those seasons of Survivor. Then I got back in. And
Mm,
then, yeah, I agree. I feel like with The Bachelor, what they've done, I think they're one of the first franchises that is like a competition show where almost like this star system was formed around it.
mhm.
And then there became, like, the gossip around what happens after the show too. I think Survivor, for the most part, things are very contained to what happens on screen and during that game. But there's definitely more opportunity if you wanna, like, gossip and do entertainment reporting for The Bachelor.
And I just felt like nobody was doing it. Like, I just felt like
Mhm.
I brought a unique perspective as like a gay male, recapping like the straightest dating show.
Yeah.
So it's just been so much fun. And it was on this week. I don't know if you're watching, but like I'm still so into it. And like it's so much fun to talk about it.
Oh my god, I just watch your recaps now, so I'm like, "Okay, I know who Maria is.
Oh
I
my
know
God.
that people are divided on whether or not they like her." I haven't watched it, so I don't know why, but I'm like, "Okay, but she's rich, so I
What
don't
is
know if
your
I should hate
take?
her or not."
Okay, what is your take on Maria? Just from what you've seen online about her, what do you think about her?
I mean, I saw them I don't know, I'm just like, I think that she delivers on what you need for a reality franchise that has been around since, like, 2000. She adds a bit of conflict. I think it's, like, easy to hate the person who grew up in the multimillionaire family, and I'm just like, "Whatever, she's, like, a good time on TV," even though I've never watched her on TV.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you feel about her?
Well, I don't know if she's from a rich family, but she's just
Mhm,
such a big personality, and, like, she's just
mhm,
a lot, and, like, she's so likable, but her presence
mhm.
is just so overwhelming, I think, so she just can't help but take over the energy in every room she walks into, even if she's not trying, so it just makes her, like it makes her so watchable, like, you just can't wait to see what she does next.
Yeah, and I think that it's really great on TV shows to have somebody who can be, like, a bit polarizing. Because 'cause I'm sure people are probably so drawn to her because of her presence, but then people are probably, like, off put where they're like, "Who is this
Mhm.
woman that is getting all this attention?"
All the attention. Yeah, I mean, I think signing on reality TV, like, we do love to talk about the most polarizing characters who have the most facets
Mhm.
to their personality, so I think it's just about embracing all the things that make you different, and that makes you, like, the best reality star you could be.
When you've interviewed the people from The Bachelor, because I know you've now talked to people for your TikTok, you've talked to people for other shows that you've worked on.
Mhm.
Have the people surprised you in terms of what they're like in person versus on screen?
I don't know, because as we were talking about before, I feel like I know everybody from
Yeah.
watching them on screen, but also through social media and listening to people on podcasts. I feel like you can really see who someone is. So no one really ever surprises me. I think it's just like exciting to meet people and interview people that you've like been a fan of and that like you're also like taking this seriously as a job and like doing it on your own. So I think it's just like so fun to have those interviews and those conversations because it's like there's always so much to say. Like I have so many questions to ask. I've been thinking about this forever. Like now is the time. Let's go. So that's how the interviews always go for me.
And I think that that's healthy because I think it shows that you have the right expectations for these things where you have enough discernment as a reality TV fan to know that whatever is happening on screen, we don't fully know if that's what the person is in real life. So you leave room for them to be themselves and to maybe surprise you or maybe not.
For sure. And like also some people that I interview, I'm like, we probably wouldn't be friends, but that doesn't mean we can't have a good
Mhm.
rapport for this hot minute. Or maybe I didn't like you on the show, but that doesn't mean we can't have a good moment on this carpet. So I always like to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Definitely. So, as we established, you created your niche with The Bachelor and talking about The Bachelor on TikTok.
Hmm.
How do you then expand from there? What happened to Zachary Reality the few years after the pandemic?
So we started with TikTok. We really started to grow that. I think I was trying to transfer my followers over to Instagram, to Twitter. I did start a podcast about 2.5 years ago, and I'm still doing it. And I'm still doing my YouTube channel that I've been doing for years. And those have been growing over time. I've had a lot of great guests. I do lives. I still just love doing it and making more content because it's like my recaps, but in more full length. So is that making as much money as I want it to? Is it as big as I want it to be? Not yet, but it's still growing every single year and every single month. And as long as that's happening, like that's definitely what I'm focused on. And also just doing a lot of different hosting opportunities and just growing, slowly but surely. Slow but sure wins the race.
Yeah. And you've been able to now cover other shows outside of The Bachelor. So, you've covered other dating shows, you've
Mhm.
covered other reality competition shows. And it's like because you built trust with your audience in terms of The Bachelor, now you have the opportunity to talk about basically any show. Well, any
Yeah.
reality show. Even though I don't know, do you watch scripted shows?
Not really, no. I'm loving
Mhm.
Traders right now. I'm watching Love is Blind. I'm watching Couple to Throuple. So
Mhm.
that's what's cool, and that kind of brings it back to my point. Like in college, I noticed that other kids in my journalism class were like talking about esports and like hard news and the weather. And I remember like I had a project to do for my senior media seminar class, and I did mine on Kylie Jenner and her like self-made billion-dollar empire. Is it really self-made or did she use her family? And that's when I realized like I can talk about whatever I want, and that's what's so cool about being online and not working directly to a company. Like, yes, I have my niche, but I can cover any show I want. I can dive into any show I want. And that's what's like one of the coolest parts about my job.
It's almost like with what you did on TikTok, you were able to leapfrog a few of the steps. And of course, we know everything takes time. You got to
Hmm.
move forward. But it's like you
Yeah.
were able to establish trust with an audience and you were able to establish your niche. Whereas if someone starts off as a journalist, you usually start off covering basically anything that you get assigned. And it takes you a while to establish what your beat is. And in the journalism world, your beat is your niche. Whereas
Mm.
you were able to do that from the get go and demonstrate that you can hold an audience, you know what you're talking about. And because of that, I think you probably got opportunities in quote unquote traditional media earlier than you would have if you had just taken the traditional route.
Yeah, and that honestly is like awesome to hear because I still feel like I want to work for like a media company one day and like
Hmm.
do the hosting thing. I thought I was taking the hard route at first by not working for a
Yeah.
big company at first and like kind of going off on my own. So it's cool that like now with the way social media is in 2024 and media, that it's the TikTokers, the content creators, they are getting seen and like we are making our own way and paving a new way
Hmm.
to cover shows and cover news and connect with audiences. So it's just like you could have predicted this because it didn't exist a few years ago. So it's crazy how we can make our brand, our name, ourselves, our jobs. Like that's just the world we live in now.
Your journey kind of reminds me. Do you know Lainey Louie, Lainey Gossip, who's from Canada?
I don't know. I feel like if I would see her face.
Okay, so she's an entertainment reporter who's in Canada, and
Hmm.
she started off as, like she had some other job, and I'm such a big fan of her. So she had some other career, and then her friends knew that she loved celebrities and gossip, so she started to just do an email newsletter to her friends with her thoughts on the celebrity news that week, and then
Hmm.
her friends started to invite other people, and then she got more and more people on this newsletter, so then she started this blog where now she has contributors, and then they now always talk about their opinions on celebrity gossip. And then now Lainey is the host of E-Talk, which is kind of like Canada's version of E-News. And then
Hmm.
she was like a daytime talk show host for a long time, but she still has that same blog. So I feel
Hmm.
like I could see you on a similar trajectory where you still have all of your Zachary Reality properties, you still have your TikTok, you still
Hmm.
have your YouTube and your podcast, and
Yeah.
then you also get the opportunity to be in the quote unquote traditional established entertainment media.
Yeah, that would be really cool to just do any like hosting opportunities. I think the ultimate goal is to do like Jeff Probst style and like kind of
Yeah.
start my own franchise show where I'm hosting and traveling the world. Like that's what I love so much
Mhm.
about Survivor. What I did love is like the travel. So I think like long term, and I'm sure everybody wants to do that, but I definitely have my eyes set on that for one day.
Yeah, and I don't think you should discount yourself by saying everybody else wants to do that because it's like,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, but like why can't you either?
But
Why
like
can't
I'm
we
gonna do
all?
it. I'm
Yeah,
gonna do it.
exactly. It's like you've already done so much.
For sure.
I saw you say something about this on TikTok, but there was that clip of Billie Eilish at the People's Choice Awards a few weeks ago
Mm.
commenting on how TikTokers were there. So how do you feel about that?
So I felt like two different ways about it. I think the first is like we should not be recording her private conversation and posting it
Mhm.
online.
Yes.
Just because that clearly was like an intimate moment and nobody was meant to hear that. And because nobody was meant to hear it, we didn't get to hear her full sentence or context.
Yeah.
So we really don't know the full story and her truth because we didn't hear it all. But based on
Yeah.
what we did hear, I didn't like it. Just because it's like whoever
Mhm.
earned their way there, whoever gets invited, whoever can find their way there deserves to be there. So that's how I feel about it.
I think it's like one of those things where I don't know, it's like when you would have an office job and you just kind of, gossip a little bit with your friend and it's just meant to be, just a way to let something out. It's not meant to be serious. You don't actually think that people
Mhm.
are not supposed to be there. But yeah, I think it's probably something that could have just been an innocent thing. If there was full context, we could have known more. So it probably became bigger than it is. But I think that, yeah, I think that it's like now that so many people are growing platforms, I feel like everyone in terms of pop culture is trying to figure out, okay, where do these people legitimately fit in? And it's
That's yeah.
still something people are figuring out.
Yeah, because TikTok is kinda like a lot of fan culture, I think, with, like, the pop culture
Mhm.
people, and it's like it's just a new way of covering these celebrities where, like, the TikTokers are almost, like, recording them when they're not looking to try and get those viral moments on the carpet, and that's just so different than, like, the entertainment journalists who are, like, on the line, they wait their turn. The TikTokers are kind of just recording things at their own pace, and there's not as many boundaries or parameters because everyone's just trying to figure it out. So, that's why I think it would've been cool if Billy maybe explained this more, just because there probably
Mhm.
is two sides to it, and it could be, like, a learning moment, and, like, it could be fun to hear, like, a celebrity's perspective on the growth of TikTokers. But, she
Mhm.
doesn't have to put herself in that position anyway. Like I said earlier, nobody should have recorded that conversation of hers. Also, funny story,
Mhm.
I went to the People's Choice Awards in, like, 2019, 2 months in, whatever. I was a seat filler. This was
Oh my
before I was on
god.
TikTok. Yeah, I was literally a
Yeah.
seat filler. You use, 1 Iota. I don't know if it still works, but you can, like, sign up to be a seat filler at these award shows, and I used to go to the talk shows, whatever, and it was so cool because like, whenever the celebrities would go on stage to present an award, I would, like, take their seat, and then I would move around, and then, of course, I ended up at the Bachelor table because obviously.
Oh my god.
So it was so it's just so funny how, things all work out.
Oh, yeah, and it's like now what? You get to interview them legitimately. Your hard work totally paid off.
Mhm. It's always full circle.
I think that part of the reason why what you do works well is because you studied broadcast journalism. You're able to find that balance between
Mhm.
being the TikToker who knows how to tell stories at this rapid pace and be
Mhm.
able to keep up with the volume of stuff that needs to get made, but you also understand how to properly report on something as a
Yeah,
journalist.
because you have to give everyone respect, you have to, like, say your opinion, like, it's wild to me how nasty some people are on TikTok during their reviews. I'm like, "Are you
Mhm.
serious?" Like, God, they're gonna watch this, right? Like, I feel like when I first started and it was pandemic, I was, like, a lot more wild because I was just, like, getting my footing in, but I think just, like, doing it
Mhm.
over time and learning the game and knowing my end goal, which is to, like, grow as an entertainment reporter, there is that balance of, like, being, like, a news person, but also just, like, being the friend that you can gossip with on TikTok. So I definitely like put an account to make sure I'm meshing both of those things. And I think you're right. Like that truly is what has worked. So thank you very much.
All these journalists that I follow on Twitter were passing around this clip the other day, and it was like this guy who was on Love Island UK interviewing Timothy Chalamet about Dune. And then the question he asked was like, "Oh, what is it like kissing your coworker if you guys are friends?" And I'm totally paraphrasing. This is not exactly how he said it, but then all the journalists were passing it around. They're like, "Oh, how come someone like this gets access to the talent, even though that is like a shitty question to ask an actor who's been acting for forever. How do you feel about people who might not necessarily have these journalism skills getting access to these opportunities?
I love that question because that has been a topic of conversation in the journalist world forever. I think that there is a double-edged sword in it because, yeah, they don't have the experience, but they do have the notoriety. And I think
Hmm.
sometimes it's about getting people to tune in. Even if it's a flop, they're tuning in. So
Hmm.
like I said, back to my point with the TikTokers as well, like whoever gets there earned their spot. Like on Survivor, if you won it, even if I don't think you deserve to win, you still won it. So I don't get
Hmm.
mad at people who get opportunities even if they don't deserve them because they got them. So bless them.
Yeah, I think it's tricky because it's like I love journalism, love to read the news. I mean, I worked in public relations for so many years. I
Mhm.
respect the credibility and the research and everything that journalists bring to telling stories and also to really making sure that we are aware of what's happening in the world and holding people accountable. I think that what's tricky is that the game is changing and the rules are changing. So it's a bit different than, for example, like being on Survivor where you have the certain rules and you have to follow them and you know the format. But oh, now with like new platforms and new ways to grow an audience and new ways to engage people and to promote things. I think it's like tough for everybody because everything is shifting. And it just so happens that TikTokers have figured out their platform for doing it. And we're all still, I don't want to say we're still figuring it out, but it's like everything is shifting for everybody.
Yeah, it almost feels like becoming like a TikToker like right out of college. Like I wasn't necessarily in that world where I had like a day job for like 8 hours, for so many years. And then like now we could be all content creators. So it's definitely a different perspective. But I did love watching you on ET Canada with all your Survivor
Oh,
hosting. So I was super proud of you to see the opportunities you got from the show because you're so amazing and you're great on camera. So I love your purple hair, everything. So I also want to give
oh
you a
my
shout
gosh,
out.
you are too sweet. That was so much fun. It sucks that ET Canada no longer exists. So it's like there's no more Survivor coverage like that in Canada. But like, oh my gosh, that's so sweet. I had such a blast doing that.
Yeah, and you just came out, so welcome. Happy for
Oh my
you.
god. Thank you so much. That one was such an interesting one because I was like, "Okay, let me just, like, say this." My family and friends have known, but I'm like, "Let me just say this so it's out by the end of the year," and I'm just like, "Oh, people are really interested in this." I'm like, "I've still got it."
I mean, I
Okay.
feel like the reason people are always so shocked when someone comes out, because like if they think of you as one way, like as then they're
Mhm.
just like for so long, then there's just like the shock of like, oh, not if we don't know. But it's obviously like
Mhm.
always fun. So I love when people could just be themselves and I mean, who cares, right?
Yeah, exactly, like, literally doesn't matter.
All the pressure to
Yeah.
like feel like you have to like come out, but it's truly just like not anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Do you feel like there are people who know you as a result of you doing your TikToks? And is there a part of your personality that you still hold back that you want to kind of keep for yourself, or do you put everything out there?
Well, I feel like if you like listen to me on like one of my podcasts and stuff, like you just like see me for me, just like we are here in this interview. So it's like sometimes TikToks are really short. I definitely think sometimes I'm like, do I want to, evolve my page into more Zachary and less recaps? And then I like think about that and I start to make videos, but then I'm like, people are following you because you have this format. It works so well. Like, don't quit while you're ahead. Like, you know what I mean? Just like keep
Hmm.
doing what
Hmm.
you're doing because it's working. And this is why people follow you. So I just think that I'm going to continue to be myself and do what I do. And whatever opportunities like happen over time, there's so much more to share about me. And there's so much more I want to do and content I want to make. And I have the rest of my life to do it. So
Yeah.
I'm content right now. Like, I'm really just happy to be chill and like, in my apartment doing my thing and just progressing at a slow rate. I mean, I'm in my 20s, so I just feel like I have so much time. This is a good time of life, I think. It's just like things are a little still, but they're moving, and that's what's great.
Yeah. And honestly, you have done so much already. You are just at the beginning.
Yeah, just getting started.
And something that I learned when I was researching you, which surprised me, is that you describe yourself as an introvert and you like to just stay home by yourself. I would have never guessed that based on your content.
Oh my God, I need to be by myself to recharge. Every time I go out, I'm like, I need to go home for a few hours. I love to be alone. I've lived alone for 4 years. So I'm like such a social butterfly when I'm out because I have that time at home to recharge for so many hours before.
Also, with the amount of content that you put out, I feel like people underestimate the amount of time it takes to make all of that. Even with all of the shows that you are covering, how do you find the time to watch all of these reality shows?
Because I'm always home. Like, I'm an introvert. Well, what do you mean from my content? You think I'm always out. I'm always home. Think about all the videos
Mhm.
I make watching the shows. So I think I just watch the shows that I watch. There truly is only 1 or 2 a night. So it kind of
Mhm.
it isn't as hard as you think it is, especially when I don't have, like, a full 9 to 5. So I kind of, like, I'm on the clock when I'm watching a TV show, right? So
Yeah.
I find the time to make it all, and I just never miss a week of the important stuff because, people want to follow someone who's consistent and reliable, like we were talking about earlier. So it's like my job depends on it, but I have made TikToks like out to dinner. I've had to pull over. We've all been there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's, like, nice to get that little peek behind the curtain, but then at the end of the day, it's like, what people are following you for. And the way that
Exactly.
I see it, people who want just that Zachary Reality reporting stuff, they can do that in the shorter form on TikTok. But the people who want the more quote unquote intimate relationship with you and want to get to know you, then they can follow you on YouTube or listen to your podcast or like look at your
Yeah.
Instagram. So it's like you're giving people the option and they just can choose their own adventure.
Yeah. Like, I post a lot more intimate stuff. Like I'll like unbox something or like, like do my makeup, whatever. So the podcasts are always a great way to just like really show who you are and like what you're all about. And I love like talking about the shows in long form too, But I know you're not watching
Yes.
any reality shows anymore. So what is up with this?
I know. Well, actually, no, no. I've been watching Love is Blind.
Oh my God.
It's
Okay.
just so good this season. And it's not that I'm not watching any reality shows ever. I think it was just like I watched so much reality TV through my lifetime. So it's like once I started watching Survivor at 11,
Mhm.
and then I just watched reality TV so much. It's like I loved all the MTV shows. I had been watching The Challenge since like 2006. Like I loved all of those shows. But I think it was just like after I did the show myself and then for a couple years, everybody just wanted to talk to me about like reality TV. I'm just like, okay, I want to escape a little because I think that that's why I liked reality TV. It was like an escape for me. But then now it intersects with my real life too much. I'm like, oh, it's no longer an escape to watch it. Like, I'm going to watch this season of Survivor. I'm going to eventually watch The Traitors once it's done airing.
It's
But
so
yeah,
good.
I've been trying to like use TV as an escape. And unfortunately, I can't escape reality TV except for
Uh-huh.
Love is Blind. Love it.
Okay. Well, I really love that you're like making sure you have like your identity outside of reality TV so you don't get sucked into all that world. Remember when I
Mhm.
had you on my podcast, and I still encourage everyone to go back and listen because we break
Yes.
that down. We break down Erica's win. But I loved like, hearing that there's like such a good update and that you're like so happy now because I, was so excited to chat with you then and now. So it's great. But tell me your favorite couple on Love is Blind.
I don't know if I have a favorite because
I
this
know, right?
season is so messed up. You have to root for Amy and is it Joey?
Amy and
Joey?
Johnny.
Johnny? Johnny. Because they
Yeah.
seem like the only healthy-ish couple because everybody else is a mess. But have you seen the rumors that Love is Blind is filming in Toronto or they're starting to cast in Toronto?
That's a great idea to bring it to Canada.
I recently had Netflix casting people start to follow me, but then I think they're probably like, "Oh, wait, she's gay. She can't do this show."
Well, why don't they have a gay Love is Blind? They did a queer ultimatum.
I wonder that all the time. I'm sure they're probably trying to figure out, like
They
I don't
have
I don't know.
to because I feel like Netflix, like, had a queer ultimatum, like,
Mhm.
so early on before that
Yeah.
franchise even got big, and, like, it just feels like a queer Love is Blind would make so much sense because you're, like, literally through
Mhm.
the wall. So I'm
Yeah.
really shocked that they haven't done that yet.
I know. I'm like, "Netflix, get on it." I think I got so into the season because it was so messy, but then what if the next seasons aren't messy? Like, you need something
Mhm.
else to draw us back in.
Well, Perfect Match season 2 is supposed to come out in the spring, and that's gonna be so messy because 'cause you'll have, like, a bunch of different Netflix personalities. You know what it is, right?
Yes, yes, I love the first season.
Okay, that is coming soon. It's gonna have, like, Love is Blind people, Ultimatum people. It's gonna be like Bachelor in Paradise Netflix edition. But this season, I'm rooting for Amy and Johnny as well because there's no one else to root for. Like, I just feel like Laura and Jeremy hate each other. Jimmy does
Mhm.
not like Chelsea. Clay and AD, like, I don't know. I hope he can stay loyal, like he said. And then Kenneth
Mhm.
and Brittany broke up. So I feel like there's
Yeah.
Amy and Johnny, like, their biggest problem is that they can't figure out how to, have sex without making a baby. So hopefully they
Mhm.
can figure that out soon and he can get some condoms.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm like, there are ways to do it, dude. Lots of people do it. That's kind of a weird relationship conflict in my mind,
Mhm.
but I'm like, okay, that is fixable.
It's a good
Otherwise, you guys seem
storyline.
good.
It's
Yeah,
a it's
yeah.
a really funny storyline.
And also, since it's reality TV, I'm like, I'm sure it was like embellished or told in a weird way. And it's probably so straightforward what actually happened, but I'm eating it up. One of my friends who is a big Bachelor fan was so pumped when she found out that I was interviewing you. So she was like, you have to ask him, how does he get inside sources and inside scoops? Not that you need to out your sources or anything, but how do you get these?
I don't really think I think I just, like, do my diligence, like, I listen to the podcast, I watch the episodes. I obviously, like, have made a lot of connections and friends with the people on the show after doing this for so long. So, I would just say that I've just become really friendly with a lot of contestants. I think that I become friends with contestants when they're on the shows, when they're off the shows. So, that's probably where I've gotten a lot of my tea from.
Genuine relationship building.
Yeah. For sure, and I used to, like, spill more tea in the beginning. I think that helped me, like, gain a following, but now since I'm, like, taking this more seriously and I'm getting more, hosting opportunities and interviewing people, I don't even spill tea anymore. I'm just truly recapping the shows.
That's smart because I think it's if your model relies on you spilling the tea, it's always going to be kind of like a race to the bottom and trying to find the most salacious thing. Whereas like what you're doing now has more longevity to it.
Exactly, for sure. So I don't even do any spoilers anymore, any crazy tea, but I used to do a lot. But now it's fun to build the relationships because then you actually get to interview them and, like, go to more red carpets and do podcasts like you're doing. So I think that's, like, what is more fun and what is more valuable in the end.
Is there a reality TV personality that you haven't met yet that is like the white whale, the person that you are dying to meet?
I would love to interview Tasha from The Bachelorette.
Mm.
I've met a lot of the big Bachelor
Mhm.
people, but Tasha is definitely someone I wanna interview and have on my podcast one day. So I would say her and Matt James as well. He's a Bachelor. I just had on Peter because I did some Traders press interviews, and that was, like, such a
Mhm.
moment for me too because I loved interviewing him. Well, I think I've just, like, met a lot of the big Bachelor people already. Like, I've met, like, Nick, and I've met Hannah Brown and Tyler, so I think just, like, it'd be cool to interview them because 'cause they're just, like Tasha had such a good season, the way she came
Mhm.
in on The Bachelorette and took over from Claire's, and then I think Matt is, like, the first Black Bachelor and him not even being on the show before. He just has
Mhm.
such a story, and then he didn't get engaged at the end, and he's still not engaged, so I just like there's so many questions to ask the 2 of them.
Yeah, and I feel like with both of them, after their respective seasons, they kind of just like went off and did their own thing. So I don't
Exactly.
know. I love seeing people kind of go off and blaze their own trail after. I'm like, oh, those are the people that I'm most curious about.
Yeah, not everyone likes to keep up with the reality worlds, like, after they get off the show, and I respect that, but I also, like, love the people who still do podcasts and engage as well, but I think it makes it more curious, and I've always said this
Hmm.
to my audience, I'm like, "Wait till Tasha drops her Bachelor Nation tell-all and her book, and I'm telling you, it's just gonna be, like, the best thing ever."
Oh, yeah. I feel like there's always something brewing. If you're not hearing from somebody right away, something is probably brewing, which is like kind of what
Yes.
I did.
I always think that there's, like, a book or, like, a podcast, like, down the line for everybody, so
Hmm.
I love a good tell-all book.
Is there a one reality show that you are dying to do?
Probably Traders.
Hmm.
I used to always wanna do Survivor. But,
Hmm.
like, it just seems, like, so hard to starve, and I really
You
don't
get
want
used to it.
I don't know, I feel like it would be really hard for me, and I don't wanna be cold at night, like, how cold are you at night?
I was, like, chilly, but also keep in mind I live in Canada, so when I would watch the show and it was all these people from California being like, "Oh my god, it's so cold, like, I'm gonna freeze to death," and then I went out there, I'm like, "Oh, it's, like, chilly, but not that bad." So who knows? Maybe I'm just crazy.
I don't
You could
wanna
do it
feel
for sure.
I don't wanna feel like Colton and quit, you know how he quit that
Mhm.
season? So, I don't wanna be the gay who gets there and, like, can't handle it. That's, like, my biggest fear, that's, like, my worst side coming out. So, Traders seems nice because 'cause you're, like, in a castle, and, like, I would definitely be interested in playing some type of competition game with strategy
Mhm.
and all that kind of fun stuff. Even though, like, the goal is to host, I feel like I have to play at least once. So, whenever that happens, that'll be cool.
I know you won't quit Survivor. Like, if you ask yourself right now, like, in your gut, "Would you ever quit?" What's the answer?
I don't know. If I'm really
Oh, okay, so don't do Survivor.
I'm just like, I just know, like, if I'm really hungry or really cold, like, I could be pushed to the edge.
Mhm. Well, on
And
Traders, they feed you, so
exactly. But I'm not, like, gonna, apply for any shows, I'm just gonna wait for them to reach out to me.
I think it's going to be inevitable, especially with Netflix, how there's so many new reality shows, like, what's it like, The Greed? I haven't watched that one
Oh,
yet,
yeah,
but there's
trust.
so many new formats. Oh, yeah, The Trust, that's it, The Trust. Like, something's gonna pop up for you.
Yeah, it'll be cool to do one just for like the bucket list, and to see like
Hmm.
what would it be like for me as someone who's like such a fan of competition shows to actually do one. So I just let the universe do its thing.
I love to hear that. Well, I'm glad the universe brought us back together today.
I
Zachary, if
know.
people want to follow you and keep up with you, where can they do that?
Thank you so much for having me on, first of all. Everybody can follow me at Zachary Reality, Zachary Reality on TikTok, YouTube, podcast, Instagram, Twitter, and those are the 5 places. I got them
Can't
all.
wait.
Yeah.
And everybody, if you like this episode, go back to Zachary's podcast and go
Mhm.
to the episode from 2022 so you can hear us talk more and see how far we've come since then.
I know. I like had to interview you a little bit today during our interview because it's so natural for me. But I loved
Yeah,
having Erika in the hot seat to talk about her Survivor win. So definitely everyone go check that out. It'll be a full circle moment to see us now back together 2 years later.
I love talking to guests who feel like I am talking to an old friend. So thank you, Zachary, for being on this week's episode. And if you have any friends who are reality TV fans or even TikTok fans, and you think they could get something out of this episode, please feel free to share it with them. Now, I love to end each episode by answering a listener question. And this was a question that somebody asked me in person, and I realized, oh, I think people are probably curious about this one. And the question is, why is purple your favorite color? So I don't recall purple being my lifelong favorite color. I feel like I've probably dabbled in a few different favorite colors along my lifetime, but I think I've always been drawn to colors that might be considered a bit more quote unquote feminine. But I remember two things that really stuck out to me. One, I was in high school going to a friend's house and I was wearing something purple. And I remember walking in and my friend's mom gasped and she was like, oh my God, purple is your color. And I was like, oh, I've never seen anyone audibly gasp and physically react to me wearing a color. I'm just going to keep this in mind. And then years later, when I was working at a public relations agency, there was this guy who worked in the office and he was just such a cool guy. You know how you can just know that somebody's a cool person when they're up to date on tech, they have cool clothes, they have cool hobbies, they are chill, they are smart, like just all around cool person. And I remember, similar to when I was in high school, I walked in and I was wearing something purple. And then he came to me and he was like, purple is really your color. And I was like, huh, again, somebody going out of their way to tell me that this is my color. So I kind of kept all of this in the back of my mind for a while. And then when I decided to dye my hair, and if you don't know the story about why I dyed my hair purple, it's on my Instagram. It's a pinned reel at the top of my profile. So make sure you go and check it out. I was thinking that I always knew that I wanted some type of unnatural color because it's something I wanted to do since I was a kid, but it was something that was just never available to me based on where I was at in life. And when I knew, okay, I want to just go for it and start to add an unnatural color to my hair, and I was thinking about the different options that would work on dark hair, ultimately I landed on purple because I wanted something that was still feminine, but did have that bit of an edge. And plus, with purple, I love that it's so regal. So I started with a few purple streaks, and then eventually, as the years went on, the full head became purple. And I think what I love about the color is that I'm able to access both that femininity and that softness. And then still there's like the edge to it and there's the toughness. And I love to be able to straddle along both of those things and kind of pick and choose how I want to present myself and how I want to dress in any moment. So I feel like the purple hair and purple in general allows me to access all of these things. Plus, I had Mystic Michaela on my podcast. It was episode 24. And Mystic Michaela is a celebrity aura reader. So she sees the life force energy that's around people. And she actually tells me in the episode that my aura color is purple and blue. So make sure you go back and check out that episode so you can hear more about how she told me purple truly is my color. And maybe you can learn more about what your aura color is too. So at this point in time, that is why purple is my favorite color. But let's be real, I feel like it is sticking for a long time. It's probably my color for life. If you were to see my condo and see everything that I have on my computer and everything I pick out for myself, you will know that I am a purple girl. So thank you to the person who asked me that question. If you have questions for me, feel free to DM them to me or to write them in the comments. And make sure to follow the podcast on YouTube and on Instagram. It's at Happy to See Me Pod. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. It was a pleasure chatting with you this week, and I will be happy to see you next Monday.